Hi, my name is Dr. Tigran Garabekyan, and I'm the founder and director of the Southern California Hip Institute. I'm a hip preservation specialist, and that's a subspecialty in orthopedics concerned with treating hip disorders in adolescents and young adults. And my goal is twofold. I want to identify problems before they cause severe arthritis in the hips, so I can help these young active patients get back to what they love doing most. And secondly, I hope to repair and restore the function in the hips so that they don't develop arthritis later in the future. This is an area in orthopedics that has evolved significantly over the last 15 years, as before, most of these patients were left untreated until they developed severe arthritis, at which point they received the hip replacement. But this is not an ideal solution for a young patient who wants to remain active.
I am 25 years old and I cannot run. I had to quit dance. I can't walk or sit or stand for long periods of time. So my hip pain started when I was 16. And at the time, I was a very competitive dancer and had been dancing 20, 30 hours a week. Got a hip arthroscopy in 2015. And that was a partial success, partial failure. So I was expecting it to work. And I was just sort of wondering why my recovery felt so slow and so tedious. And the more questions I asked, the more they just told me the pain is normal, the pain is normal, the pain is normal. And once I got a year out, finally my follow-up doctor out here, who had trained under the guy who did my surgery, said, okay, maybe it's time to start talking about other options. And that's when I asked him about the hip replacement. And he said, actually, there's this thing called the PAO. And if you were my sister or cousin, that's what I would want you to do instead of the replacement since you're 25. So I started looking around for doctors who did it, and I found him.
Jenna's condition is interesting in that she suffers from impingement in both of her hips, but only her left hip also has dysplasia that is contributing to instability. The difference is that impingement can be treated completely arthroscopically in a minimally invasive outpatient setting. I used 2 small keyhole incisions with a fiber optic camera and a high-speed burr to reshape the hip joint and remove the abnormal bone that is causing the impingement conflict. The plan for Jenna's left hip is to realign her shallow socket through a procedure that is called a periacetabular osteotomy, or PAO. And in doing so, I'm going to provide a more stable roof over the ball to treat the underlying instability in her hip. This is a hip with dysplasia, a shallow hip socket, and instability and excessive play. On the other side, that same hip has been treated with the periacetabular osteotomy, and the arrow indicates the way that that fragment has been rotated after the pelvis was cut. Screws are placed from the top to stabilize the fragment, and you can see that the ball is nicely supported and there are no shear forces or instability when the hip is loaded. Once this is healed, the patient can engage in any activities without restrictions. We have patients who run marathons, we have triathletes who have had this procedure done, and the goal is that the preserved hip will last 15, 20 years or more, depending on the age of the patient when they have it done. And we can ward off the need for a hip replacement indefinitely, but if not indefinitely, then at least until the patient is well into their 60s, where a single hip replacement procedure will last them the rest of their lives. These patients are typically in their 20s or 30s, and if they were to have a hip replacement at that age, they would have to have a second, third, or even fourth operation to replace worn out parts. This is a durable, natural solution that can last them 20 to 25 years when done in the right patient. And during that time, they have a natural feeling hip rather than a prosthetic feeling hip. They have no restrictions on what they can do.
If you're researching the PAO, Dr. Garabekyan's name is going to come up. So he popped up right away, and I just assumed that that would not be a doctor I would go to, because I assumed that I couldn't afford him or that he wouldn't be in network or something like that. There are like a single-digit number of doctors in the entire state of California that do this operation. So the fact that he's right here and that he's one of the best is like crazy that he's right here. I genuinely never considered the possibility that the doctor whose research I was reading would be the doctor who would be performing it on me.
It's obvious that Jenna is very passionate about dance, and I'm glad to be her surgeon because nothing will make me happier than to see her back on the stage.